something that you cover, of course, is Syria. And you had a recent tweet that I wanted to take a look at. You wrote, another reason why Assad was ousted, Syria's foreign debt was just 15 million. That is nothing. Saudi Arabia and Qatar just paid it off, and now Syria is eligible for loans from the World Bank. Now watch the loan sharks plunge the country into massive debt. So can you talk about this and just offer also your assessment kind of where we are right now in Syria?
Syria is really like dead. I was saying towards the beginning of the show, you had this real social cohesion that I've never really seen anywhere else. I mean, even if in other places in the Levant, you might not find it all the time. I mean, if you look at Lebanon, it's very, very fractured as a society, you know, very, very sectarian. Syria wasn't like that at all, you know. And for all its faults under Assad, for all the bad things and corruption that existed, the secular part wasn't a bad thing. On the contrary, you know, you had like Christians were like 10% of the population. You know, I've never felt discriminated against like once, you know, not once. As I told you, you had Jews, Christians, Muslims living side by side. And that's how it's always been really in that region. One of the reasons they wanted to get rid of Assad is of course because he supported Lebanon against Israel, supported Iran, and his father the same, by the way, and his father was also an ally of the Soviets. A lot of Syrian weaponry came from the Soviets until Israel destroyed it a few months ago. You know, you still have like these S-200s from the Cold War that actually had a formidable air defense network over Syria, and people talk about it like it's a civil war. It wasn't a civil war. I mean, it was a civil war to the extent that the CIA made it into one. And I should remind people that the CIA spent over $1 billion. I mean, that's what we know from the New York Times. Historically, that's the most expensive operation anywhere in history. And just ask yourself, like, you know, why would the CIA spend $1 million, never mind $1 billion, in another country unless they were serving their own interests or that of their allies? You know, you can't dumb that down to me like, oh, it's some kind of like, you know, freedom party for Syrians and stuff. All of the things that I and others were warning about, that you're going to have Al-Qaeda coming to power, you're going to have more sectarianism, you're going to have Israel taking more land, imposing its normalization and its will on the country. Every single one of these things has come true. And about the tweet with Saudi Arabia and Qatar, you know, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they had a split afterwards because Saudi Arabia is Wahhabism is their main ideology. Qatar are more Muslim Brotherhood. These are very different branches of Sunni Islam. People like to talk about like, oh, it's Iran and Saudi Arabia, you know, Shias and Sunnis. It's like this stupid Western way of looking at things. Not at all like that. But the point is that before they had this split, they were all on board, you know, despite their differences, with supporting regime change in Syria. And each one of them had their own goals. You know, Saudi Arabia for a long time has normalized ties with Israel under the table. If you look at the siege that the Yemenis put in place, how is Israel getting goods in? They couldn't get it through the sea anymore. So Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan basically built a land corridor for them. That's how they've been able to stay afloat these last years. You look at Qatar, they've wanted to build a pipeline through Syria. And when you mention this during the last 10 years of the so-called civil war, you'd be dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. And I swear to God, like it's almost comical. 3 days after Assad is gone, 3 days, you can go look this up. You've got the Turkish energy minister bringing up this pipeline, right? So it's a project that's mainly by Qatar and by Turkey, because when you're building gas pipelines and oil pipelines, you want to keep them under 2,000 kilometers to make them viable economically. You know, otherwise the costs start going up like crazy. Just geographically, you need to have it running through Syria. And Assad has always been like opposed to normalizing with Israel or kind of opening Syria up to Western corporations and banks. And that kind of debt, 15 million, is unbelievable. I mean, for any country, like 15 million is nothing. I mean, that's some individuals have that kind of wealth. For a whole country to have $15 million in debt is a joke. Like they didn't need Saudi Arabia and Qatar to pay it off. The only reason they did that is because now Syria is going to take out all these loans from the World Bank, from the IMF. And of course, where does that loaned money go to? It goes towards Saudi Arabia to build construction projects, right? And it goes to Qatar to build that pipeline and other projects. And of course, Israel, I'm assuming, is also going to be, you know, one of the beneficiaries of this loan program, because they've gotten normalization not only on the table, but it's like a done deal. You know, in the first weeks after Assad fell, you had the entire Syrian military's weapons depots, jets, ships, every single thing was destroyed, like the navy gone. And like Assad is in Russia now, right? So these things belong to the Syrian people technically, right? To defend themselves. So why is Israel going and destroying them? It's just purely out of spite. And Jolani, who declared himself the president, right? I thought we were going to have elections.
Moderate rebel.
Yeah, the moderate rebel,
Quote,
right?
unquote, yeah.
This guy, he's in Damascus being bombed by Israel, basically. They dropped like 500 bombs on Syria, including many on Damascus. And he doesn't say a word. I mean, like, just out of self-respect, someone is dropping bombs on your city and you're calling yourself the president. You don't say a word? You don't say a thing? And when you did hear comments from this new regime or administration, they would be positive ones. They'd be like, yeah, well, Israel's just defending itself. I think it was the governor of Damascus, the new governor of Damascus, who said those words. He said, Israel is, they're just nervous. The level of cowardice is truly unbelievable. Like, we don't have to go from Assad to that. You know, I'm sure we can find it in between. But obviously the CIA invested a lot of money. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all of these countries invested a lot of money. You know, France, for example, their intelligence services were paying cement factories to keep running 24/7, even though that money was going to Al-Qaeda, which they don't tell you. So everyone has had a massive economic interest in Syria, in addition to the political one, which is basically stop supporting the Palestinians and Lebanon, and stop supporting Iran. Because, you know, you look at the map, Syria is a bridge between Iran, Iraq, and then Lebanon and Palestine. So now that's gone, and they've been trying for 50 years to do that, and they've scored a massive victory. Like, if you ask me, Syria is the biggest Israeli victory in this genocide or this last year and a half. Biggest strategic victory. I mean, they dismantled PIJ. PIJ was headquartered in Damascus. That's one of the biggest groups in Gaza. They arrested a lot of the leaders.
Islamic Jihad.
Exactly, yeah. And you know, they've basically told them disband. And this has been a long-term Israeli goal. Like, if I were an Israeli in Tel Aviv, a policymaker, I'd be popping champagne, you know, at this kind of news. Never mind the normalization and all the other, you know, gifts that come in this goodie bag. It's a massive strategic victory, far greater than what they did in Lebanon and in Palestine.
Wow. Well, anything else you want to make sure we talk about, or any final words? People are really excited that you're here. This is an extra long stream because we're so excited to be talking to you, and you should definitely come back.
Thank you. I'm happy that Asa got his devices back, because that ruling is good
great
for all of us.
The author of the weaponization of anti-Semitism, and also a contributor at Electronic Intifada, and someone who's written a lot about the Hannibal Directive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very good news.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. And yeah, please do stay in touch and keep us updated on what's happening, and we will continue to cover this.
Thank you, Katie. Really just great show. And you know, for the people listening, I was listening actually before I came on. That's how good it is. So I really love that conversation about apartheid in South Africa, and it was just wonderful.
I was thinking, I was like, oh man, I wish I should have them on together. All of you guys.
Yes,
together.
that would be great.
Yeah.